Hey guys, and welcome to another edition of GOAT Movies, the podcast for the simple movie lover, where we discuss movies we've recently seen and see if they have what it takes to become the next greatest of all time. What makes a GOAT movie? Is it quotable? Is it lovable? Is it any-able? I'm your host Carlos, and you'll find that out today and more. Get your life auxiliary ready, because today we're reviewing The Upside with Bryan Cranston and Kevin Hart. Hey guys, I'm so glad to be back with you guys in this podcast. I'm so glad that I'm able to go ahead and start reviewing movies again. There's been so much going on since the last time that we talked. I think the last time that we talked, I actually reviewed A Simple Favor with Anna Kendrick and Blake Lively. And that movie is actually already out on DVD and Blu-ray, so I hope you guys had the chance to actually watch it, review it, and listen to the podcast. And some of you have actually sent me your remarks about the podcast and what you thought about the movie. And you guessed it, we are split down the middle. But we'll go ahead and cover that a little bit later in the show, maybe even another podcast. A lot of you have been asking for a part 2. One of my friends is really interested in talking to me about it, so who knows, maybe in the future we'll see another podcast in regards to A Simple Favor. But today we're talking about the movie The Upside. Before we jump into that, I just want to fill you guys in on what's been going on. So actually, the last time that we talked was back in September, and I haven't been able to get a podcast or actually really go to the movie theater since then. What happened was my computer actually crashed, and I lost a lot of my templates. We actually got back up and running in December, but then of course everything went downhill again. Work got crazy, family things went crazy, and there have just been so many changes. I want to give a big shout out to Nick and Marion Greco. You guys may remember them from the last time that they were on the show. They're big supporters of the show. We want to congratulate them for the birth of their little baby boy, Andrew Cashman Greco. Congratulations, guys. A big shout out. I also want to give a big shout out to Adam and Kelsey Pape for welcoming their son just a couple of days after the Grecos. They are welcoming their second son, third child altogether. They welcomed Wilder Chase Pape. Welcome to the world, Wilder. And so there have just been so many changes going on, but we finally get to start making podcasts again and getting you those reviews of those movies so that you don't waste your money, you don't waste your time. I go and watch the horrible movies for you so that you don't have to. So I really hope that you guys are ready for today's podcast. So just before we begin, I actually just came across something that I thought was pretty cool. 25 years ago, so we're in 2019, 25 years ago, that would put us right around 1994. According to IMDb, the most highly rated movies that were originally released were The Shawshank Redemption. I actually haven't seen it. I know. Shame on me. Pulp Fiction, one of my all-time favorite movies. I can see that movie over and over and over again. Forrest Gump. Amazing movie. If you haven't seen that movie, just turn the podcast off right now. Go watch it and then come on back because that movie is amazing. One of the best soundtracks I've ever heard in my life. Leon the Professional, that was a really good movie. One of the first times that I was actually introduced to Natalie Portman, which she did a pretty good job in that one. And Gary Oldman, I mean, that movie was amazing. And of course, the great Lion King was released 25 years ago. I can't believe it. I feel so old. And there's actually a live action movie of the Lion King that is in the works for that. So I'm a little bit nervous about all these live actions. I'm really excited for them. One live action that I'm really interested in seeing is the Aladdin one. Aladdin was one of my all-time favorite movies as growing up as a kid. I can recite that movie from start to finish, backwards, sideways, however you want to say it. Robin Williams, God bless you, rest in peace. You are surely missed. I can't imagine what a live action Aladdin is going to be. Will Smith is taking the role of the genie in the live action for Aladdin, so we'll see how that actually works out. I'm trying to hold my reservations on that one. But we did talk about Forrest Gump. That one actually won the Academy Award for Best Picture in 1994. I can't believe that was 25 years ago, guys. I am getting so old. I don't know how I'm going to deal with this. Anyways, let's go ahead and jump right into this week's movie. We are going to be talking about The Upside, starring Bryan Cranston and Kevin Hart. This movie was released on January the 11th. It is about 2 hours long, and it's PG-13. For those of you who don't know, this movie is actually a remake of a French movie called The Intouchables. The Intouchables is all in French. It is subtitled. If you have the opportunity to watch that, I highly, highly recommend it. It is an amazing movie. The chemistry between the two actors in that movie was absolutely superb. The Upside, starring Bryan Cranston and Kevin Hart, they did all right. I really did enjoy it. I didn't think it was a waste of time. Bryan Cranston is an extremely talented actor. Kevin Hart, he is one of the hardest working men in Hollywood that I know. He's got so many things cooking for himself. He's always on tour. If you get a chance to follow his Snapchat, I highly recommend it. He is constantly working. I don't know when this guy actually sleeps. In the movie, we also have Nicole Kidman, which she did pretty good. I can't remember the last thing I saw that had Nicole Kidman, so I was pretty interested in watching that. Now, let's go ahead and jump right into this movie. Basically, what we're dealing with is Bryan Cranston portrays, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, this is actually based on a true story, and Bryan Cranston plays Philippe Lacasse, who is a wealthy billionaire, and Kevin Hart portrays Del Scott, who is the complete opposite of that. Someone who's struggling day in and day out to just make ends meet. He's got a son that he's trying to provide for, and I don't know, they didn't make it really too clear if it was an ex-wife or just an ex-girlfriend. He has a criminal past. He is just struggling in life, and, he's just looking for a break. So, of course, these two could not be on polar opposites of the spectrum here. One's rich, one's poor, one's white, one's black, one has a criminal history, one probably doesn't even have speeding tickets. But, that's basically what's going on here. I will say this. When I saw this movie was really Americanized, for lack of a better term. There was a lot of stuff that came out in this movie that wasn't in the original French one, and I have to say that I absolutely prefer the French one to this one. The Upside did have a couple of scenes that I really enjoyed. I don't understand how you could take a different route when dealing with a movie that's based on a true story, but there were obvious changes made to the storyline between The Upside and The Intouchables, which is the French version. So, all in all, let's go ahead and just jump into this. We have a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being absolutely worst, not worth bootlegging, not worth sneaking into. And then you've got 10, which is your absolutely amazing movie. You got to drop what you're doing and go watch it in theaters right now. On that scale, we can also give 0.5 whenever we need to, but for this movie, I'm actually going to go ahead and rate this a 7. The movie was, for lack of a better term, it was just okay. It wasn't great. And, I really have to say that maybe I was comparing it a little bit too much to the French one and trying to make those connections. And maybe that was the flaw in me. However, like I said before, the French movie is actually amazing. I really, really enjoyed it, and I actually came across it just on accident. So if you haven't seen the French one, you may enjoy this one a little bit more than a 7, but the chemistry between Bryan Cranston and Kevin Hart in this movie was just a little bit too forced. And like I said, there was a lot of slapsticky comedy. You could see a lot of things coming. In the trailer, you see that Kevin Hart is standing in a futuristic shower and, he can't control how hot or cold and he's just being sprayed with water. That to me is gimmicky. There's a lot of that going on in the movie. They also changed the storyline a little as far as love interests go and what's going on with Kevin Hart's character. In the French one, he is actually just fighting for his family, his brothers and sisters. And in this one, Kevin Hart is fighting for his child. And I don't want to give away too much more just because I haven't issued the spoiler alert. But I also want to just highly recommend both movies. And just really, if you ever get the chance to watch both of them, hit me up. You can let me know what you think. And we can discuss it a little bit further. Like I said, I am not opposed to doing part 2 of any of the podcasts that I've already issued. So I really hope that you guys take the opportunity to really watch this one and the French one, and then really give me your thoughts on that. Remember, you can always follow me on Instagram at GoatMoviesPC, and you can also email me at goatmoviespc@gmail.com. That's goatmovies, plural, PC for podcast, at gmail.com. So without further ado, here you guys go, the trailer for The Upside.
You need to prove you're looking for work.
I've been looking, trust me.
3 signatures by tomorrow, or you can tell it to the judge. Tell me about a time when you worked hard to solve a problem.
This morning, getting up.
We're gonna find you someone you like.
Let me be your arms and your legs.
I love that. All right.
Penthouse.
You need to wait your turn.
Relax, it's not a holdup. Just sign this one, please.
How would I sign it?
I don't know. Slowly. What, don't your arms work?
They don't.
You can move your mouth.
As can you. I need assistance.
How much does it pay? Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. It's my bad, man.
You are not qualified for this position.
Then buckle!
Have you ever changed a catheter?
Nah.
Pinch the head, insert.
I can't feel it.
Oh, well, I can. You want to feed your soul? Then listen to It's Clean. Think about what you're trying to do to me. It's amazing, ain't it? Sound just like her.
Yeah, it's uncanny.
You as rich as Jay-Z?
No, richer.
Which car is yours?
All of these to the right.
Oh, my God.
They're not practical.
Exactly. You can have any girl you want. What about this lady with all the Botox? I'll be perfect for each other. You can't move your body, she can't move her face.
I specifically said nothing for my birthday.
I'm sorry you gotta have a surprise party in your huge mansion. Some of us got real problems. I'm fighting to see my son.
And whose fault is it? Is it yours, or is the world out to get you?
Are you mad? You wanna break this big-ass bottle of wine? Yeah! What else you wanna do?
The bull.
What?
Dell made a mess.
So I surrender. This is the moment I surrender. Even now, let it in.
Just relax. I am relaxed. This is me being relaxed.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
A crummy commercial? Son of a bitch.
Hey guys, this is Carlos, and I just wanted to tell you guys how amazing this process of starting a podcast has been for me. Movies have always been such a passion of mine, and now I have an outlet for that passion. Speaking of which, do you have a passion you want to share with the world? Are you interested in starting a podcast? Or have you already taken your passion to the next level and started your own business that revolves around that passion? Whatever the passion, whatever the business, you know how important getting your name out there is. I just came across a company who is willing to help you do just that. It's called Evolved Curations. Evolved Curations is dedicated to helping business owners, creators, and influencers reach their goals by giving you access to their team of experts who can help in areas such as social media management, web design, and so much more. Check them out at evolvedcurations.com. That's evolvedcurations.com, and don't forget to tell them that Carlos from Goat Movies sent you. And there you have it, The Upside, now in theaters, rated PG-13, 2 hours long, starring Bryan Cranston and Kevin Hart. Now comes the time where we issue our spoiler alert.
Red alert!
For those of you who are new to the podcast, from this point on, anything that we discuss is fair game. Spoilers are ahead. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, go ahead and pause the podcast, go watch it, and come on back. Now that we've issued our spoiler alert, we can talk a little bit more in detail about what we really thought about this movie. As I had said earlier in the podcast, this was really, for lack of a better term, very Americanized. there was a lot of changes from the French movie to this movie. Obviously, the main thing being that this now takes place in New York City versus Paris, France. In the French film, I don't really want to talk too much about the French film because that's not the movie that we're reviewing today. We're reviewing The Upside. But I do have to say that the French one, if you get the chance, please rent it on iTunes. It will really be worth your while to watch it. I really enjoyed it. That movie, I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm giving it a 9.5. I would say it's almost perfect. The chemistry between the two actors, the storyline was just amazing, which is one of my main complaints about this movie. So I know that I'm not reviewing The Intouchables, I'm reviewing The Upside, but I can't talk about one without mentioning the other. In The Intouchables, there is a love story between Philip, who is the quadriplegic portrayed by Bryan Cranston, and someone that he is writing love letters to. Now, in The Intouchables, he actually ends up with that woman, and the struggle that he has within the movie, and his auxiliary, which in the French one, his name is Driss. Here it's Del. I guess that doesn't really translate in America. But in the French one, Driss really helps Philip out of his shell. In the French one, Philip he's okay with what is going on with his life. He understands that he is a quadriplegic and he has to, basically depend on somebody else to live his life for him. Now, in the French one, I don't recall really too much about what happened with his wife. We do know that she is deceased, as in the American one. And in the American one, we do talk a little bit more about it. We find out that she died from cancer. In both films, he is a quadriplegic. He hurt himself during a paragliding accident. And in both films, he goes paragliding again. Now, with what I had mentioned previously is that in the French film, Driss, or for this term, Del, he is a struggling black man who is basically just couch surfing. And in this one, he has a love interest, he has a child. In the French one, he's trying to help his aunt, who has actually raised him as her own. And they've got like 8, 9 kids, and so they're really struggling. One of my main things is that if this is based on a true story, which one is the truth? Because I saw the French one first, I have to depend, or really, I have to assume that the one that is more accurate is the first one that I saw. Not to mention the fact that it takes place in Paris, and this one takes place in New York City. So there is that aspect of it. The other thing about it is that in the French film, one of the main things is that Driss, and you'll hear me use that term interchangeably, Del, Driss. Either way you want to look at it, we're talking about Kevin Hart's character. He steals a Fabergé egg from Philip. And this is a gift that his wife, Philip's wife, would give him one of these things every year on their anniversary or on their birthday. I'm not too clear on that. I don't remember that too clearly. But in the American one, she gets him a copy or first edition of certain books. And so in this movie, Kevin Hart's character steals one of these books and gives it to his son. And throughout the movie, he's trying to get it back. In the French one, he's trying to get the Fabergé egg back from one of his younger brothers, who is trying to sell drugs or something like that. But the point is that they're both trying to save their loved ones, which is ultimately what this whole movie's about, is loving one another and loving someone more than you love yourself, which is pretty amazing. In both the movies, basically, this character that is portrayed by Kevin Hart doesn't show pity for Philip, who is a quadriplegic, who cannot move or feel anything below the neck. And that's what Philip wants. He doesn't need anybody to feel sorry for him. He doesn't want anybody to cater to him, although they have to, because he doesn't have arms or legs. He can't move any of them. He has to be spoon-fed. He has to be showered. He has to be clothed, everything. He cannot do anything for himself. One thing I will say is that in this film, there were certain parts that I did enjoy. I really enjoyed the scene where the birthday party, you heard part of it in the trailer, Philip really just starts getting very angry and he didn't want a surprise party. And Kevin Hart really just puts him in check, kind of like, really, bro? This is a first world problem. You have a bunch of your rich friends coming over and they are bringing you all this expensive crap and you're complaining because somebody wanted to do something nice for you. Like, check yourself, you know? And so that doesn't really take place in the French one. Although one of my favorite scenes in the French one is the birthday scene, because there's this scene where Philip is trying to teach Driss about classical music, and Driss just really isn't feeling it, and he starts his own little critique of all these special musical numbers that Philip has the orchestra play for him. So even if you don't watch the film, go to YouTube, type in the Intouchables birthday scene, and it is hilarious. And they use... In the American one, Kevin Hart's character is really into Aretha Franklin, which she is great. May she rest in peace. She was one of the greatest singers I have ever heard. I loved a lot of her music. In the Intouchables, in the French one, the band that they're really following is Earth, Wind & Fire. So just amazing. Amazing. This whole thing is about music also. So you'll really enjoy that one. Like I said, one of the biggest things, though, is that the chemistry between the two actors in The Intouchables does not meet what happened in The Upside. Bryan Cranston, Kevin Hart were great. I'm not saying that they did a bad job. They did a great job as this, portraying these two people, but the chemistry between them seemed a little too forced. In the French one, The Intouchables, it was so smooth, you couldn't tell what was going on. I mean, it was amazing. I really, really loved it. And I'm really sorry that I keep switching back and forth between the two, but I can't help it. That's how much I loved The Intouchables. I highly, highly recommend it. I know I've said it a million times and I'm going to say it a million more. The Intouchables is great. You will absolutely love it. Now, in the American film, there comes a point where, well, really in both the films, there comes a point where Kevin Hart's character has to leave. And in the American one, Philip actually fires him and says, you know what, let's just call it quits. This is over with. Like, let's just get this done, right? But in the French one, Philip kind of feels bad. He sees that Driss's family is struggling, that they need him there as the father figure. And so he encourages him and says, you know what, it's fine. Go ahead, go tend to your family. And there's a very moving, touching scene in the French one. So there is that difference. In America, he gets fired. In France, he gets let go. I mean, just little subtleties like that. Also, in the American one, he meets, they have that portion, that love triangle, or not triangle, but that love scene where, you know, Philip is corresponding with a woman that he's never seen. He just corresponds with her. He just sends her emails, or handwritten notes, I should say, not emails. And in both the movies, you know, Kevin Hart's character takes it upon himself to really introduce the two and basically take their relationship to the next level. The issue being is that Philip, in both movies, never tells this woman that he is in a wheelchair and that he can't do anything, that he is a quadriplegic. So that basically stays the same throughout both films. Now, in this one, I really liked what they did. In the American one, I really enjoyed, or I shouldn't say enjoyed because that's bad. I felt for Philip in the restaurant scene where she is totally fine with him at first. And then once she starts having to feed him and give him something to drink, and she just realizes that, you know, if this relationship was to go to the next level, is she really prepared to commit herself to this man 24/7? You know, when you're married, I'm not married, so I wouldn't know, but I wouldn't know firsthand, I should say. When you're married, you dedicate your life to your loved one, but it's not to that degree. You know, they talk about sickness and in health, but are you really willing to bathe somebody every single day, clothe someone every single day, insert a catheter every single day, clean them, feed them, I mean, every single day for the rest of your lives. And then what happens with one of you when you pass? If he were to pass and she doesn't have anything else to live for, for lack, I mean, what happens? And if she dies, he's back at square one. So that scene in the restaurant where they're talking and she realizes, maybe this is a little bit more than I can handle. That was a very powerful and emotional scene. And you really feel for Philip in that scene because you got to put yourself in that position. There was a couple of years ago where I was actually in a car accident and I broke my right hand. It was shattered from my shoulder to my elbow and I couldn't do anything. I was also born with a defect on my left arm, so I can't turn my arm the complete way. So put your arms in front of you and palms down, and then turn your palms up towards the ceiling. My left hand will not go up towards the ceiling. I can't turn my left hand. So I've actually grown up my entire life not really using my left hand. And of course, I'm right-handed. So when I broke my right arm, it was awful. I couldn't shower. I couldn't use the restroom. I couldn't do anything. I actually had to go back to my mom's. And God bless her. She's an angel. She took care of me for many months. I love you, Mama. Thank you so much for all your help. But it was one of the most difficult times in my life because I wasn't able to do anything for myself. It was awful. So I kind of connected with Philip there. And if you watch this movie, I really encourage you guys to really think about it. Sit in a chair and think about how you're going to put on your shoes, put on your socks, put on your pants, change the channel to the television, push play on this amazing podcast that you're listening to. You can't do anything because you can't move anything below your neck. And so you really feel for Philip because he's sitting there. He has been corresponding with this woman for a couple of months. He lost the love of his life, so he's lonely. And all of a sudden, she's just sitting there, and it's the most awkward situation because you hear what she's saying, and part of you tells you, like, what are you doing, woman? Like, you start feeling bad for Philip, and then you realize you kind of side with her. You kind of have to put yourself in her shoes and think about what would you really do in that situation. You'd hope that you would, be there, but that's a huge commitment, especially for someone that you're just now meeting. In the French film, that never really takes place. There is a scene in the French one where they decide to meet in person. He shows up and she's like maybe 2 or 3 minutes late, but he's so paranoid and so self-conscious about being in a wheelchair, and he never told her that he was in a wheelchair, that he decides to leave. And so he never actually meets her. Driss, or Kevin Hart's character, finds out about this in the end and then takes him to dinner and sits there and says, oh, I'm so glad that we're having dinner, but you're actually not having dinner with me. This time you can't run away. And he kind of forces Philip out of his comfort zone. And you feel that little awkwardness for Philip because he cannot move. He can't move the wheelchair anywhere. And he's sitting in the middle of this crowded restaurant looking around for someone to help him, but he doesn't want to ask for help. And then all of a sudden, this woman that he's been corresponding with sits down with him. They have a lovely dinner. And that's really where the movie ends. And that was just a beautiful, beautiful scene in the French one. You feel that pity for Philip, but it's the love story, and then it ends, and it's a happy ending for everybody. In this one, it was pretty early on in the movie where this restaurant scene took place, and you do feel bad for Philip. But then you start thinking about this woman that he's been corresponding with, and you're just like, man, what a bitch. I can't believe she would do that. But again, you have to put yourself in that situation and really think about what you would do in that situation. You really can't tell. In both situations, Kevin Hart's character is not around, so he really doesn't know what's going on. One major thing that I didn't like about the American one is the love story that they tried to build in between Nicole Kidman, who is basically an employee of Bryan Cranston, or Philip, right? And apparently she's been in love with him this whole time, but she's never said anything, and she quit this high-paying job just to be around him. And then they kind of replicate that scene from the French one where Kevin Hart's character walks away and leaves him in the restaurant by himself. And then this beautiful woman comes up behind him, and then he realizes that it's the love of his life. Well, in the French one, it's a woman he's been corresponding with. In the American one, it's Nicole Kidman. She's come back because Bryan Cranston actually fired her as well. So he's just firing people left and right. This is what I'm talking about, where it was really Americanized. There was also just weird scenes where Kevin Hart and where he brings prostitutes into this penthouse in New York. There is a little bit of that in the French one as well, but nothing too serious. One of the great scenes that I loved in both of them is, Philip is this art collector, and I'm really not too sure what Philip does for a living. Like I said, this is a true story. In the American one, they say that he wrote a book, he is an investor, he buys companies, fixes them, and then sells them. So that is quite clear in the American one, but in the French one, we never really find out what happened to him or what he does for a living or how he earned his money. There was also a daughter in the French one. So he has a daughter, and there's a scene in the French one which is amazing where he basically sets her straight because she has spent all this time abusing the people that are there to help him. But that doesn't really take place in the American one. So there was the birthday scene, which is pretty cool, where he really just lets out that anger. He can't really throw anything or break anything. And as someone who has been that angry before, sometimes it just helps to rip something apart, break something, get a piece of glass or a glass from your cabinet and just toss it, break it, hit it down on the ground, and just unleash that anger. Sometimes it just really helps. And that scene between Kevin Hart and Bryan Cranston really, really helped. Other than that, there really wasn't too much to really talk about. There is the art scene. Philip is an art collector and he buys all these pieces. And in both the French and the American one, Kevin Hart's character decides to draw something or paint something himself. The French one was a little bit more artistic. It was just more colors, more abstract. Kevin Hart's was really weird because it was a dog and there was it was an actual painting of something. So I'm not artistic. So, it's definitely not something that I would have purchased. But in both the films, Philip convinces somebody to buy these pieces of quote-unquote art for a vast amount of money. We're talking at $12,000 or pounds or whatever you want to call them. It's quite a lot of money. And then he gives all the money to Kevin Hart's character. And Kevin Hart is just astonished that somebody would be willing to pay that much. Of course, it was all based on the fact that Philip tricked somebody. So if that was actually art, like I said, I review movies. I don't review paintings of any kind of or sort. But that was a pretty funny scene as well. There was also the scene at the very end where basically after Kevin Hart's character leaves, Philip just goes into a downward spiral. He stops shaving. He stops doing anything. Of course, he never shaved himself. He always had somebody do it for him. But he basically just lets himself go. And then there's a great scene. You can see it in the trailer. Kevin Hart's character starts shaving him, and they go through all these different personas. And they just have a lot of fun. And it really just shows the friendship and the chemistry that these two had between each other. And it was great. But like I said, in the American one, Kevin Hart and Bryan Cranston, it just seems a little bit more forced. Whereas in the French one, it's a little bit more natural, which is something that I really, really appreciated. Like I said, all in all, I am going to go ahead and give this movie a rating of 7. I think you'll really enjoy it if you go out. You're not going to really waste your time.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
Hey guys, this is Carlos, and I just want to take a moment to let you know that it's okay not to be okay. As someone who suffers from depression and anxiety, I know what it's like not to be okay. I've lost friends and loved ones to drugs and suicide brought on by depression and anxiety, and I want to make sure that I shed light on an issue that sometimes is swept under the rug. I want to make sure that me and my show do our part to make a difference. If you know someone who may be having suicidal thoughts or tendencies, or you yourself may be battling some demons, be sure to reach out. Remember, you can always reach out to the National Suicide Prevention Hotline by dialing 1-800-273-8255 or by visiting suicidepreventionlifeline.org and chat with someone online. Remember, 1-800-273-8255 or visit suicidepreventionlifeline.org. The Lifeline provides 24/7 free and confidential support for people in distress. prevention and crisis resources for you or your loved ones, and best practices for professionals. We can all prevent suicide, and again, it's okay not to be okay. But if you want a really good night in with, just a bowl of popcorn, a loved one, and a great movie, I know it's subtitled and I know it asks a lot of you as a viewer just to read the entire time. I really highly encourage you to watch The Intouchables, Intouchables, Intouchables. It is in French. It's great. I absolutely loved it. I highly recommend that one over The Upside. But, all in all, The Upside, it was a good movie. I liked it. I enjoyed it. I saw it by myself. I don't think it was a waste of time. I think people here in America may like it a little bit more if they haven't seen the French one. And I really think that that's where my downfall was with this, is that I had seen the French one, and the entire time I was just trying to compare one to the other. So that really just ruined it for me. But I did like it. It was pretty good. So we'll see where that goes. That's going to do it for this edition of GOAT Movies. Thank you so much for listening, guys. I really appreciate all the love and support. If you have any questions or comments or concerns, if you have a movie that you'd like for me to review, if you'd like to be a guest on the show, go ahead and shoot me an email at goatmoviespc@gmail.com. That's goatmovies, plural, pc@gmail.com. You can also follow me on Instagram at goatmoviespc, where you will find all the latest on GOAT Movies. Be sure to rate and comment this episode and all the other episodes that you've listened to. That way I know exactly what to do for you guys so that we can keep this podcast going. Be sure to also share this podcast with all your friends on all your social platforms. I'd really appreciate it. I had so much fun doing this. It's been too long, and I really can't wait to see you guys next week. We'll see what movie's on deck, and we will see you next week.
Get a partner, then begin. Hold whatever pose you're in. Pose in. Everybody pose. Get a partner.